Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you this morning. Before we share some of the insights that help drive meaning across your categories for your customers, which are more holistic as you'll see when we go through it, I want to share a little bit of context because I think it's important to understand where customers see themselves today. If it works. There we go. Many of you know we live in a moment where there's a lot of political crisis and uncertainty around the world. Many things are happening around the world that make people feel a little bit psychologically unstable in their local communities. And what we see this leads to is there's more pull for political action or activism from the part of the brands that they buy products or services from. We'll talk a little bit more about what our study entails at a global level, but just to begin with, I did want to share with you some insights that we have across the world. 55% of consumers believe that companies play a more important role today than governments in helping solve societal and environmental problems, which means that every single one of us in this room has a responsibility to ensure that our company is doing good for the functional benefits that our products and services provide, for the people we're trying to service, and for the societies and the communities we live and work in. And this is really what our study is about. We also know, and I'm not going to focus on millennials or Gen Z, okay? It's the entire group of people that we're looking at. That 77% of consumers want to buy products and services from companies that share their values. And during this presentation, I'm going to share lots of cases on how different companies interpret meaningfulness for themselves and for the customers that they're trying to reach. Now, one of the things we know is that consumers expect brands to be more involved. The numbers will be different around the world according to how people feel. We said 55% of people want brands to do more than governments, but brands overall have high expectations around the world. I will say that in Europe, and you'll see the numbers a little bit later, we're a bit more brand agnostic and more rational in our approach. We always want the products to be functional first, and then we worry about everything else. It doesn't mean that being functional alone is enough to be meaningful. You'll see that there's a more holistic approach that people are expecting from you. So this is a statistic that we share for the last 10 years that we've been running this study, and it's getting worse every year, and I feel a bit like the bearer of bad news. But the reality is that even though we work in our departments and we love the brands and the services that we sell to customers, from the eyes of a consumer, 77% of the brands in the world could disappear, and they don't care. This is kind of important. In Europe, it's worse. I'm showing you the global numbers to not depress you too much, but in Europe and North America, we're in the top 80th percentile, 90% of brands. People really don't see the value and the contribution that brands and services are giving to their everyday lives. And this is an issue that we all have to face, a gap between the expectations that our customers have of us and what they perceive we are actually delivering. At the same time, there is, as I said, a high expectation. 84% of customers around the world expect you to be honest about what you're delivering, but the feeling is that only 38% of you are actually doing a decent job of this. So, newsflash, this is a bit of a slap on the wrist for everybody. All of us in the room have this responsibility to ensure that we are communicating honestly. It's about authenticity. It's about making sure that your customers understand truly what you are delivering to their everyday lives. But what our big message for this year really was that we're moving from brand purpose to brand activism. Consumers are turning to you and saying, Mr. Brand, what are you doing for me and what are you doing for my community and my society? And as we go through this presentation, you'll see that those expectations are slightly different according to the industry that we'll be talking about. So, what is our study? Now I'm probably going to be the only person who talks about finances to you today, but it's really important for you to know that meaningful isn't just warm and fuzzy. It actually drives business. And I'm going to show you some numbers that show the correlation between the typical KPIs that a brand would be looking at and the meaningfulness that the consumers attach to that particular brand or service. So it isn't just because it makes us feel good. It actually drives our business in the long term, which your shareholders will love. So let's get a little bit nitty-gritty into the details of the study and a bit academic. This thing is a bit of a monster, to be honest with you. We interviewed 350,000 people around the world in over 30 countries, and in the last wave of the study, we had more than 1,800 brands spanning over 22 different industries. We have a lot of data to sift through. And a lot of interesting insights that come out of the study every year. So this is sort of the width of what we're looking at, and all of the data and insights that I'll be sharing with you come from this package of structure that we have on meaningful brands. So why does it matter? Let's get really practical. It matters because it actually people expect it from you, and it drives your business. This is probably the only chart where I'm going to separate the generations, but this is important because later we're going to talk about content. It isn't just about delivering your product or service, but it's the kinds of content that you deliver to people that is important. And we know that more and more so, every generation is expecting content from you. And content doesn't necessarily mean a television commercial. It could mean experiences, solutions, VIP events. One thing that we find with the younger generations who are glued to their mobile phones 24 hours a day is that they're starting to be in need of detox and are asking brands to co-create things, to be part of real human live interaction. More and more we're seeing that kind of expectation. But we do know, as I said, that there is business returns. There is a return on meaning. So let me show you some of those statistics before you, I hope you've all had a little bit of coffee this morning. What do we know? Across all the industries, the share of wallet is multiplied by 9 for a brand that is considered meaningful versus one that's not. Now, what does that mean? That means if I have 10 euros in my pocket to buy yogurt, I'm more likely to spend 9 euros on a brand I consider meaningful, whereas I probably only spend 1 or 2 on the brand I don't consider meaningful. Some of these industries will be lower multiples. Obviously, automobiles, most of us are not going to spend 9 times more on a car that we consider meaningful. But the truth is, the same direction happens in every single industry that we look at. The multiplier goes from 2 to 3 to 9 times higher that we're willing to spend on brands we consider meaningful. If we look at the typical KPIs, we also see statistically significant differences between brands that people consider meaningful and brands that people don't consider meaningful. And each of your industries will be different. If we looked at just telecom, we'll see that the loyalty, the churn rate, which is a big concern for the telecom industry, the loyalty and repurchase rates are significantly higher for brands that people consider meaningful versus ones that they don't. But overall, we see that the general direction, including I'm willing to pay more for this product, are higher for those that we consider meaningful. Now, we took this a little bit further because I have some data analysts in my team, and they like to play with calculations and numbers, and we looked at elasticity as well. So if I have a brand that has a score of 65 meaningful, and I increase that by 10% next year in the perception in the eyes of my target market, everything else goes up too. Interestingly enough, purchase rates go up by 11%, and I'm willing to pay more for the product goes up. So we do see a direct and very positive correlation between the results of your brand and what people consider. And the next chart is, because my boss makes me put this up here, is about stock market value. We do see over the last 10 years, the brands that have high meaningful scores also outperform the stock market by 134%. So this is just to reassure anybody, if you go down this road, there is definitely proof and data that shows that it will drive your business. So let's get into how we define meaningful and what that actually means. Again, as I said at the beginning, we really look at it holistically. So for you to be a meaningful brand in the eyes of most customers, there are 3 primary things you need to do. The first, especially in Europe, and you'll see the data in just a bit, is you need to actually work. Okay? If you're a toothpaste and you're telling people you're going to whiten your teeth, that's your number 1 responsibility. You better whiten their teeth. If you're a service that tells people you're going to help them manage their budget because you're a bank that gives them a user-friendly experience on an application, then that better be the case for them. Because in Europe, if you don't do that first, you can forget about all the warm and fuzzy. Okay? You're never going to drive a higher return on your meaningfulness by not delivering on the functional benefits. The only markets that I have that give the same weight to functional, personal, and collective benefits is China and India. People rate those at the same level. But generally speaking, most Europeans and most North Americans tend to be more rational point of entry when it comes to how they judge whether they consider a brand to be contributing significantly to their quality of life. The next thing we look at is personal benefits. What is the brand doing for me? You'll see that some changes have happened over the last couple of years as to how important this is for people. But you'll also see is that it's not the same for every industry. As I mentioned, in finance, it helps me save money, helps me manage my budget. In healthcare, it'll be things like gives me peace of mind, makes me feel healthy. In consumer electronics and tech companies, it's things like teaches me new skills, helps me connect with the people I care about. So those benefits will be different according to the industry deliverables that people have in mind for your specific product or service. And then, obviously, there's the collective benefit. Definitely not the least important. You'll see that's actually growing in importance. And collective benefits runs for everything from, I consider this brand to be ethical, I consider them to be transparent, I consider them to be benefiting my local economy, helping my local community. This isn't always local brands, by the way. Travel, tourism, retail, banking industries, this is a very important part of the definition of meaningful. But we have a lot of great cases of global brands that are also very good at showing the local customers that they're helping to drive and help their local communities in positive ways. So, what makes it meaningful? Let's break down this magic recipe that we talked about. As I said, this is the global number, all right? But it's very similar to what you would see in Europe. 41% of that definition of meaningful is functional benefits. Do I consider the product good quality? Are they safe? Are they responsible? Do they deliver on what I think they're supposed to be doing or what they tell me they're supposed to be doing? Personal benefits, if we take all of the categories combined in all 1,800 products that we looked at, we see that it's things like makes my life easier, gives me peace of mind, gives me new ideas. This is coming up more and more. Now, I'm going to make a little joke for you here, because if I pull the millennials, the first thing that pops up in personal benefits is helps me show off. I'm not making that up. I have a lot of data. It's always quite interesting to see that pop up. Anyway, and then the collective benefits, right? How am I a good workplace? How do I help the local community? How do I solve societal and environmental problems in a way that my consumer perceives I'm helping their local country? Now, what's interesting is we see some shifts over the years. The functional benefits have come down in weight. They're still the most important, but the personal and the collective benefits are growing in importance for people, especially in the collective. We have about a 2-point jump versus last year, which is a lot when you're looking at 350,000 people, as to the importance this has for people. They really want to see what you are doing to solve societal and environmental problems, which in the end, as I said, drives better results on your KPI performances. Now, the thing is, when you have this much data, you realize that I can't just slap one formula fits all to every country and every industry. Every country and every industry is different. And you need to understand those parameters to better drive to the expectations that your customers and your target group want from you. Now, most of Europe is sitting down here in the bottom bucket. On the left-hand side, what we call the more pragmatic, brand-agnostic countries, right? Which means that on the horizontal axis, you're driven more by functional benefits than by personal and collective. And on the vertical axis, this is almost, I don't want to call it optimism, because it would sound terrible to say that we Europeans are not very optimistic. But we tend to be more critical and more skeptical, and we score things lower than somebody in China, in Malaysia, in Singapore, or in Mexico or Brazil. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that brands are less meaningful, just our point of reference is slightly lower than some other markets. All right, so that's the first thing I want to point out, that really digging into the data in your local country is really important to get the cultural context right. The second thing is that not every industry is the same. And what's been fascinating doing this study for 10 years is we see where the shifts are happening. So same idea, vertical axis is high meaningful and low meaningful, and horizontal axis is driven more by functional, driven more by personal and collective. Take a look at automotive. They're sitting up here on the upper right-hand quadrant. 5 years ago, if I would have shown you this chart, automotive was over here on the left-hand side. Still very meaningful, but heavily functionally driven. What's happened with automotive? Well, when we look at the data, we see what? Now the automotive industry is about mobility. It's about connecting your car to the music, your Spotify list that you want to listen to the GPS that now tells you where you need to go. The functional and the personal and collective benefits of the automotive industry have shifted, and people see a more balanced approach in this industry. I also want to point out another one. Where are my friends? Beverage. They've just gone down the list, okay? That has a lot to do with health. People don't want to drink sugary drinks anymore. I wish I would have known this 5 years ago and gone to Coca-Cola and Red Bull and told them all about this. But we see that the numbers have been dropping for beverage industry. The ones that shouldn't shock you is, generally speaking, finance, insurance, utilities don't do a very good job of the holistic approach that people are looking for coming from those industries. But there are plenty of opportunities, given especially a lot of the local nature of banks and energy and utilities, to fulfill the expectations that people have, especially in collective benefits. So I want to show you a couple of examples. All of these brands are different. The examples I'm going to share with you, I want to preface them by saying something really important. It's not about hijacking a social cause because it's trending on Twitter. All right? Your customers want an authentic relationship with you, and they can smell this stuff a mile away. The 3 examples I'm going to share with you on how to drive meaning for your brand and communicate that you are sharing the values and dealing with the environmental and societal concerns that people have is because these 3 brands did the work. They deconstructed the DNA of their brand and said, what are my values and where can I contribute to society in a way that makes sense? I've seen a lot of disastrous cases of greenwashing or hijacking social causes that maybe give you a little bump for about 6 months in your sales, but it's not a long-term approach to growing engagement with your consumers and, in the end, driving your business. Okay, everybody got that? There'll be a quiz afterwards. All right, so the first example I want to share with you, and you might have seen this video 1,000 times already. I know I've shown it. I've seen other people present this video in conferences, but this is Nike. Now, I wanted you first to focus on the results of the study. So this year versus last year, we had functional benefits remain the same, but we have significant increases in their scores on personal and collective benefits. The campaign I'm going to share with you is very specific to the cultural context of the United States. However, they did do several of these. I saw one recently that they did in Mexico that was very specific to the context of female athletes in Mexico. So they are doing the effort to think globally, attaching the DNA of their brand, but then acting locally to what's relevant to the customers they're trying to reach in those markets. Do any of you know this story about Colin Kaepernick? You know this story, right? Okay, so I don't have to explain it. I'll just play the video.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Now, this is a great example of a brand really looking into their own values and their own DNA and projecting with their consumers as to what they are what's important to them and what they value in society. It doesn't mean we're all going to go talk on social causes and fighting for what you believe in. Brands like Dannon have a very different cause. Danone, as you all know, Danone, as we call them in France, is a food company. What is their responsibility? They're about one planet. They're about making sure people eat healthier. This is a new campaign, so I don't have any results to show you yet, but it's also a great example, given that since it's been launched, we've seen these kinds of results. I don't have their business numbers yet, but we've seen significant increases in their personal and collective benefits, as well as their functional benefits. A few years ago, I had a discussion with Danone because when we looked at that horizontal axis chart that I showed you earlier between meaningful, low meaningful, collective, functional, the dairy category used to be really personal and collective and had just done this all the way to functional. It was almost as if we'd spend so much time talking about vitamin D fortified, good for the digestive system, and we forgot to say yogurt tastes good and people like it.
Our planet. You might not know you have it, but you use this power every single day. This power is the food you choose. Because everything we eat and drink affects our lives and the world we live in. Health, life, local communities, forests, farming, water, climate, tomorrow. So you can create the life, the society, the world you want. Each time you eat and drink. Just be curious. Ask who made your food. Think about how it got to you. Because if you eat well, it's good for everyone. This is what we believe at Danone. Together we can inspire a revolution for an entire generation. Danone. One planet, one health.
All right, I'm running out of time, so I have to go a little bit more quickly. I hope you guys are still all awake. Just very quickly, Johnson & Johnson also has a big campaign on Health for Humanity. We've also seen their scores. I invite you all to go to YouTube and find this campaign. We're not going to go through it now because I still have a lot of material to cover. So let's talk about what's happening in the categories. What do we see at a global scale? We see that on the functional part, most industries are doing a really good job. So check that box. Most of you have got that down packed. You are more or less delivering on the perception and expectation that people have of you, on the functional benefits your product or your service is supposed to deliver. We have a problem in personal between the expectation and the perception of performance. And this is almost true in every industry that we looked at. You should be doing a better job on personal. And to be honest, the collective, that's an average score. We could probably bring that up as well, all right? So let's talk a little bit about that. There are many ways for you to be active as a brand and get a better score on the collective benefits to better drive your business. And as I said earlier, it's not about hijacking what's trending on Twitter. It really is about doing that work with the DNA of your brand and the values that you stand for and understanding how to link that to values that are important to your customers and that you will be contributing to society as a whole. These are a couple other examples of different industries that have done different things. I work a lot with Durex, by the way. They have offices here in Amsterdam. One of their big things is safe sex for everyone, and they've actually broken that down into 3 different pillars. And one of those pillars is about ensuring that they gender equality, that they're about LGBTQ rights, and they do a very good job of making sure that the customers are trying to understand that that's a value that they present and that they respect. So many brands can do this in many, many different ways. So how do we inspire more meaningful connections? I told you earlier that people want content, right? They want apps, they want VIP experiences, they want solutions, they want music festivals, they want everything from you. This is a difficult situation. Not only do they not care if you disappear, but they actually want you to be at present and very important moments of their life to help them solve issues or to help them learn new skills or to help them connect with the people they care about. And the content can be delivered in many different ways. But at the same time, we find ourselves in this bizarre paradigm where people are just overloaded. I don't know about you guys, but it takes me about an hour to figure out what I'm going to watch. And by the time between Amazon Prime, Netflix, Apple TV, blah, 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 I'm so frustrated. It's such a waste of time. And I'm not the only person saying that, okay? 78%, I think it is, of Americans are frustrated with navigation to figure out what content they want to watch. So it turns out, not shockingly, 420 million people, when it comes to traditional advertising, have have ad blockers on their phone. So if we can't reach them the way we used to in 1970 and 1980, we need to find new ways to engage with our customer in a way that's meaningful to them. But it turns out that most of the brands who are spending, and I'm not making this up, $52 billion in new forms of content, 58% of it is just garbage. It's not meaningful to the people you're trying to reach. There's a reason for that. I didn't put the brands up. I don't want to offend anybody in the room. We just put the industries up. So you could see how different industries perform when it comes to meaningful content. And again, automotive does a great job. Restaurants, I was really surprised, don't do such a great job of delivering content that people are asking them for. And just like what we said earlier on what drives meaning, the kinds of content that people want from you in every industry will not be the same. So you need to dig in to understand what kinds of content, what kinds of solutions, experiences, events, co-creation opportunities people want from your industry. Now, this is important because I work for Havas, who's owned by Vivendi, and Vivendi is an entertainment group. And I spend a lot of time inside my company explaining to people that not all content is meant to be entertaining. I know it makes us all feel good and we win awards at Cannes because it makes everybody laugh, but it turns out that in a lot of industries, the kinds of content people want from you is not a celebrity slapped on an ad. Okay? In retail, for instance, in Europe, the number one thing people want from you is rewards. Okay, shocker. Give me loyalty programs and discounts and promotions. That's the first thing you have to deliver on. Forget about that football team sponsorship if you're not delivering first on the content that people want from you in loyalty programs and discounts and promotions. In other industries like healthcare, it's about inspire me and help me deal with my chronic illness. So many times I see a lot of our clients make this mistake, that they think that if they put something funny or something celebrity splashed all over something, if you're not using that celebrity in the right way, in the way that customers expect from you, you won't be delivering content that's meaningful to your customers. So understanding what the role of content is really important first and foremost, before you deliver it through a music video or a live festival or a VIP event. So again, as I said, it's different for every industry, right? So across the different industries, you can see some of the top ranked types of content that people want from you. If you're in beverages and internet and media, you're in luck. Entertaining content is the first thing people want from you. But if you're looking at food, it's inspire me. Personal care, it's help and inspire me. Travel and tourism, it's reward me. That's the first thing you need to be looking at to ensure that you deliver on their expectations. Just like, as we said before, by the way, countries are different too a little bit on this one too. You have a lot more inspire and entertaining coming from Latin America than you have in other markets. Spain is much more driven by reward me, okay? They're still trying to pull out of the economic crisis. So you'll see some differences there. But I want to share a couple of examples with you. So in the apparel industry, we're going to use the same approach, right? So on the vertical axis, you have most associated role of content and least associated, which is pretty much, that's where all the brands are today, so that's what people see. And on the horizontal axis is, where do I actually want you to be, okay? Because just because you're delivering content that I associate with rewarding, for instance, doesn't actually mean that's where I want you there, even if it's good. So we need to look at the performance, the association, and the expectation that people have of you for meaningful content, all right? So in apparel, it's about almost everything. These guys are screwed. It's like automotive. It's just like automotive. People want everything from you. Inspire me, entertain me, inform me, reward me. But where it's quite interesting is help me. Why? Because it's actually something that people don't associate with this category, but it's a very high expectation. So it's an opportunity for your brand to differentiate itself from the competition in the marketplace. Okay? Now, we could deconstruct that all day, but we're just going to show you one example that comes back to what we said before. We're going to tie it all together in my last 5 minutes today, which is that functional, collective, and personal benefits. And this is a case that brings all of that together, how to be a meaningful brand and meaningful content for the customers you're trying to reach. I don't know if there's a video. I think there might be a video. Maybe not. Yes.
Yo, get up, people. Let's run for the oceans. Come on, let's go. Every kilometer counts, you guys. George. You gotta save the ocean.
What you slowing down for, baby? Do it, do it. Move it, move it. Move it, move it.
So this is a case, as you can see from the video, of a brand taking their own DNA, adding that to a specific cause, which was plastic in the ocean, to drive awareness of the problem of pollution in today's oceans. The next case is actually my absolute favorite. It's not from a very sexy category, but for me personally, I think in healthcare, there's so much more that we could do to drive content for the customers that we're trying to reach. Again, this is about help and inform me, and educate and inspire me is this place where the brand can be different and deliver on something that people really expect but don't associate very highly with the category. And what I love about this is a case from India, where you're going to see a brand that's a nasal spray. It might be, I think they have it in Europe too. I don't know if it's the same name. Is it the same name? Okay. But they did something fabulous for the marathon in the city. They took the benefit of their product to the individual person's, what do you call these? Narines in French. Your nasal cavities or whatever. And they applied it to the city to help the marathon runners have a cleaner air during the event.
New Delhi is one of the world's most polluted cities. Otrivin, the world's leading nasal decongestant spray, sponsored the Amity Half Marathon by cleaning the air. With very powerful mist cannons, Otrivin eliminated pollution particles hours before and during the race. The tiniest drops of water latch onto chemicals, dust and dirt and fall to the ground harmlessly like rain, reducing pollution up to 93% and creating a corridor of healthier air for the duration of the race. This is a new way to make outdoor events in polluted areas healthier and more enjoyable, simply by helping people breathe better.
All right, it didn't get 5 bazillion views on YouTube or 4 bajillion impressions, but it is a case that is so perfectly tied to the DNA of the brand and delivering to the local community the collective and personal benefits that the brand is expected to deliver from their customers. Sorry, there was no celebrity in that one. So I have 2 minutes left, so perfect timing. That thing makes me really nervous, by the way. It's just like ticking down like a bomb. Anyway, so if we wrap up a little bit what we've been talking about this morning, driving meaning for your customers is a very holistic approach. You still have to be pragmatic and deliver on those functional benefits people expect from you, but there are things they also expect from you that are personal to themselves, which will be different by industry, and collective to what you're contributing to society. And what we do know is that more and more so, people are really expecting you to communicate and to show honestly what you are doing to contribute to their quality of life and the quality of life of the people that live around them. But we know that most brands today don't do a very decent job on the personal benefits and could definitely up their scores on the collective benefits as well. So we know there's an opportunity. If we're positive, we don't look at that as a weakness. We look at it as an opportunity to drive our meaningfulness for our customers and in the end, drive our business as well. The other thing we can say is that those are increasingly important. I don't know if you remember, there are some like arrows on that page that had the weight of functional, personal, and collective. More and more so, those are becoming more important to driving that meaningfulness for your customers. And the way to close that gap also is through the content that you deliver for people, communicating your benefits, but also showing how you're helping them with apps, with solutions. As I mentioned before, Gen Z is very interested in real human interaction. The poor things are so deprived. So make sure that if you're a brand who's trying to target Gen Z, give them live events, give them an opportunity to interact with other customers, to co-create things. They're really, really looking for that kind of interaction. And then, as we said, 90% of customers, regardless of the sector or generation we're looking at, is looking for content from you. In healthcare, it's about apps that help me deal with my chronic illness. I saw a really good example the other day from Universal Music, actually, that was working with a healthcare company to deliver an app for people who have Parkinson's disease to help them manage their agility and their movement every day according to playlists of music that would suit whatever health state they were in that morning when they woke up. That's a great example of how you can drive those personal benefits for your customers through new pieces of content. I think my is going like my alarm clock. Thank you. That is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you.